The old oak had stood on this plot for more than 100 years. It had survived the revolution, the war, the perestroika. Under its crown, children played, adults rested, weddings were celebrated, and then lightning struck. The tree split in half. The owner called a team to uproot the stump, clear the space for a gazebo. Ordinary work, nothing special. But when the excavator lifted the roots, the workers recoiled. One of them turned pale and began to cross himself. The second grabbed his phone and with trembling hands dialed the police. What they saw in the pit turned the life of the entire village upside down. Friends, if you like such stories, subscribe to the channel and like it. This way you won't miss new videos. In the meantime, write in the comments from which city you are and how old you are. It's very interesting to know who is watching us. The thunderstorm came to Birchville early in the morning when the village was still asleep. The sky split in half with a blinding flash, and the old oak on George Newman's plot took the hit. The tree, which had stood there for more than 100 years, split from the top to the roots, as if chopped by a giant axe. George Newman woke up from the roar, ran out to the porch in his underwear, and froze, looking at the smoking remains of what had been a mighty tree yesterday. Half the crown had fallen on the fence, the other barely missed the corner of the house. Charred wood was still smoldering despite the pouring rain. "Well, there's your oak," he muttered. 100 years it stood, and now this. George Newman had bought this house 3 years ago when he retired. The plot came to him from distant relatives, some kind of seventh water on jelly, a second cousin on his mother's side. The house was old but sturdy, and the oak in the yard was the envy of all the neighbors. The spreading crown provided shade on hot days. Acorns were collected in sacks in the fall. Squirrels frolicked on the branches. Now only a blackened skeleton remained of the beauty. In the morning, George Newman called a company that dealt with tree removal. They arrived 2 days later, guys in a battered truck with a trailer and a tracked excavator. "Serious job," whistled the foreman, walking around the oak. "The root system spread out 5 meters in all directions. We'll have to dig thoroughly." "Dig," waved George Newman. "I want a gazebo here, so a flat area." The work boiled. First, they cut down the remains of the crown, sawed the trunk into logs. Then the excavator began to dig around the rootstock. George Newman watched from the porch, sipping tea from a large mug. By lunch, they had dug a decent pit, 1.5 meters deep. The roots went even further, clinging to the ground like arthritic fingers. The excavator operator Lenny, a healthy guy with an anchor tattoo on his forearm, cursed through his teeth, trying to hook a particularly stubborn root with the bucket. "There's something there," suddenly said one of the workers, a young guy named Stan. He jumped into the pit and began to rake the earth with his hands. "Some kind of fabric rags, maybe someone buried a dog," suggested the foreman. "It happens." Stan dug further, then sharply pulled back his hands and backed away. "This is not a dog." George Newman set aside his mug and approached the edge of the pit. Below, in the interweaving of roots and clods of earth, something round whitened. Smooth, too smooth for stone. A skull. A human skull looked at them with empty eye sockets, and in one of them a thin root thread was stuck. Investigator of the investigative committee, Emily Carter, arrived an hour later. Behind her were criminologists, a forensic medic, a local officer. The small yard filled with people in uniform and civilian clothes. Emily was 42 years old, of which 18 she had given to investigative work. She started in the district, then transferred to the regional center. She rose to the rank of Major of Justice, earned a reputation as stubborn and thorough. Colleagues called her a bulldog in a skirt, not out of malice, rather with respect. If Carter grabbed a case, she didn't let go until she dug to the truth. She stood at the edge of the pit and watched as the criminologists carefully freed the remains from the earth. The skeleton lay on its side in a fetal position. Arms folded on the chest, knees pulled up, as if the person had fallen asleep and not woken up. "A woman," said the forensic medic Dr. Paul Andrews, a stocky man with a gray beard. Judging by the structure of the pelvis and skull, young, 20 to 25 years old. Lay in the ground for a long time, 15 years minimum. Cause of death, hide bone broken. Characteristic damage in strangulation, but I'll say more precisely after the examination. Emily squatted down. The criminologist carefully cleaned the skeleton's hands from the adhering clay. "Emily, look, on the ring finger of the right hand, gold gleamed dully, a wedding ring covered with patina but intact. You can take it off." The criminologist carefully pulled the ring off the phalanx. The bone was thin, fragile, wiped the ring with a damp cloth and brought it to the light. "There's an engraving, 06.6, Emily wrote in her notebook. June 2008, 16 years ago, and something else. The criminologist pointed to the rags of fabric stuck to the ribs. Looks like lace. White lace. Emily leaned closer. The fabric had almost decayed, but fragments remained in places. Indeed, white lace with a small floral pattern and tiny pearl beads woven into the threads. A wedding dress, she said. She was buried in a wedding dress. That evening, Emily sat in her office, flipping through databases of missing persons. The ring with the engraving and date 06.6 gave a clear starting point. Need to find a woman named something starting with V who married a man named something starting with M on June 6, 2008, and disappeared soon after. She started with the Regional Registry Archive. The request went out. The answer was promised by morning, but Emily didn't like to wait. Birchville is a small village, 3,000 residents. In 2008, perhaps even fewer. How many weddings could there be in June? A dozen maximum, 1.5. She called the local officer, a young lieutenant named Kevin Land, who helped today on site. Kevin, you're local, right? Born here, only left for service in the city, then returned. In 2008, how old were you? 14. Do you remember anything unusual? Disappearance, missing? Land paused, collecting his thoughts. In 2008. Wait, yes, there was a case. Davidson. The young wife ran away from her husband, scandal all over the village. Her mother then went to everyone looking, even came to our house, showed photos. Davidson, repeated Emily. Do you remember the name? Veronica, I think, or Victoria, something like that. And her husband was definitely Max, I remember that. His mother, Helen Peterson, was the director of the sewing factory. A strict lady, everyone was afraid of her. Max and Veronica. Kevin, find out the address of this Max Davidson. Urgently, Max Davidson lived in a one-room apartment on the outskirts of the district center. A peeling Khrushchev building. 3rd floor, no elevator. Emily climbed the chipped steps, wrinkled her nose at the smell of cat urine in the entrance, rang the doorbell. They didn't open right away. Behind the door, steps shuffled, the lock rattled. Then the door opened on the chain, and a face appeared in the gap. Once Max Davidson was probably a handsome man, tall, broad-shouldered, with regular features. But now in front of Emily stood a bloated 40-year-old guy with bags under his eyes and 3-day stubble. He reeked of hangover and stale clothes. What do you want? Emily showed her ID. Investigative Committee. Carter, Emily, I need to talk to you, Max. He looked at the ID for a long time, as if trying to read something between the lines. Then he removed the chain and opened the door. Come in. The apartment looked as Emily expected. Dirty dishes in the sink, overflowing trash bin, empty bottles along the wall in a neat row like soldiers on parade. On the table, an open bottle of vodka, a glass, a plate with dried pasta. Sit down if you find a place. Max swept some rags from the chair and threw them on the sofa. I won't offer tea. None. Emily sat down. Max remained standing, leaning against the door jamb. You know why I'm here? She said. It wasn't a question. Max was silent, looked at the floor, then slowly raised his gaze. Found her, huh? He closed his eyes, stood like that for a few seconds. Then, to Emily's surprise, he didn't cry, didn't panic, just heavily sank onto the sofa right on the piled rags and clutched his head in his hands. 16 years, he said hoarsely. 16 years I've been waiting for this day. Emily turned on the recorder. Max didn't object. Tell me what happened in 2008. He was silent for a long time, collecting his thoughts, then spoke slowly, quietly, as if each word was difficult. We got married in June, 6th day. Veronica, she was so sunny. You know there are people around whom it's bright. She was one of those. He fell silent, rubbed his face with his palms. Her mother didn't approve from the beginning. Veronica from a simple family, father. Max buried his face in his palms. His shoulders shook. 8 weeks, he squeezed out through sobs. 8 weeks. She had just found out. We hadn't even told her mother yet. It was our secret. He cried for a long time, ugly with sobs and snot. Emily waited. She knew how to wait. Finally, Max calmed down a bit, wiped his face with the hem of his t-shirt. That evening in September, Veronica said she wanted to move, rent an apartment in the city until the child is born, and then maybe leave altogether to San Francisco or Seattle, away from her mother. How did you react? I agreed. Max stared at the wall in front of him with an unseeing gaze. Honestly, I was tired of this war. I thought we'd move, mother would calm down, then the grandchild would be born, she'd soften, everything would work out. But everything went wrong. Yes. Max's voice became dull, dead. That evening, mother called me for a talk, said, he swallowed convulsively, said that Veronica was cheating on me, that she herself saw Veronica meeting some guy, and that the move was to run away to him, take my money and run. You believed? Mother never lied to me. Never. She was tough, yes, domineering, but not a liar. I believed her all my life. Max fell silent again, then continued, and his voice was barely audible. I came home. Veronica was packing things. I asked where. She said, looking for an apartment. I asked, with whom? She didn't understand. Then I showed her the photos. What photos? Mother gave them. Veronica with some guy, hugging, kissing. Veronica looked at them and didn't understand. Said it's a montage, fake. Started screaming that I'm crazy, that Mother is setting me against her. And I saw only those photos, saw her packing things, saw that she wants to leave. Max raised his head. His eyes were empty, burned out. I don't remember how it happened. I only remember hands on her throat, her eyes, how she wheezed, how she stopped moving. Silence hung in the room. Cars hummed outside the window, somewhere a dog barked. I sat next to her until morning, couldn't move. Then Mother came, saw and what? Said, I'll fix everything. Helen Peterson Davidson was a woman whom in Birchville they respected and feared. She had headed the sewing factory Dawn for 23 years, took over in Perestroika, a half-dead enterprise, and pulled it out of the ruins. Somewhere she negotiated, somewhere she pressed, somewhere she went over heads. In the 90s, when factories closed one after another, Dawn survived, got an order from the military for sewing uniforms, and that saved the enterprise. Helen knew everyone in the district, from the administration head to the last local officer. With some she was friends, some she kept on a short leash. Over these years, she had accumulated enough connections and secrets to solve almost any problem. That September morning 2008, she entered her son's room and saw him sitting on the floor next to his daughter-in-law's body. Max rocked from side to side like a pendulum and howled quietly, not cried, but howled like an animal. Helen closed the door behind her, checked Veronica's pulse, although it was clear that the girl was dead. Blue face, bulging eyes, finger marks on the neck. Stand up, she said to her son. Max didn't react. Stand up, I said. She lifted him by the collar like a puppy, although he was a head taller. Sat him on the bed, poured water from a carafe, made him drink. Listened to me carefully. Helen's voice was icy and calm. You won't tell anyone a word. You'll go to work now. Yes, to work as usual. Come back in the evening. I'll fix everything. Mom, what have I done? Max looked at her with lost eyes. What have I done? You defended your honor. She betrayed you, wanted to rob and run. You acted like a man. She was pregnant, he whispered. Mom, she was pregnant. Helen froze only for a second. Then her face became stone again. It's not known from whom yet. Go to work. Don't you dare drink. Don't you dare talk. Do you understand me? Max nodded mechanically. He was like a sleepwalker, moved, spoke, but as if not present in his own body. When the door closed behind her son, Helen called Victor, her driver, and concurrently the man who solved delicate issues for her for 15 years already. Victor arrived 20 minutes later, listened silently, nodded. We'll bury her. Not just bury, she should never be found. Never. Victor looked at the oak in the yard, huge, century-old, with roots going deep into the ground. Under the roots, he said, no one will dig there. The tree is old, they won't cut it. By evening, everything was done. Veronica was wrapped in plastic, lowered into the pit that Victor dug between the roots of the oak. The earth was trampled, last year's leaves thrown on top. In a week, no traces remained. And then Helen began the second part of the plan, creating the legend. Emily listened to Max's story without interrupting. The story came out terrible. Not so much the murder itself, as the cold-bloodedness with which his mother covered the tracks. Mother told everyone that Veronica ran away, continued Max, that she packed her things and left for her lover. I had to play the role of the deceived husband, insulted, humiliated. The first days I couldn't, just sat at home, didn't go out. Mother told everyone I was in shock from the betrayal. And Veronica's things, Mother packed, some burned, some gave away. Said I don't want her rags lying around the house. People nodded understandingly, thought from anger. Documents, phone Mother drowned in the pond, passport. Max hesitated, I don't know, probably destroyed too. Emily made notes in her notebook. The scheme was simple and effective. No body, no evidence, just a woman who left her husband for another man. A banal story. Thousands like it, no one will dig deep. The police looked for Veronica. Her mother filed a statement. Nina Smith, my former mother-in-law, she didn't believe Veronica could run away. Said her daughter isn't like that. She would have reported, she would have called. But the police, Max smirked bitterly. Well, what police? Adult woman left voluntarily. No signs of crime. Started a search, checked trains, buses, found no one. The case hung for a year and closed. And your mother? Mother helped search, imagine, went with the mother-in-law to instances, wrote requests, gave money for posting ads. Everyone said, what a noble woman, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were at odds, and she still helps. Mother basked in this. Max's voice became bitter, basked in people's admiration, in their respect. Emily left Max late in the evening. Her head was buzzing with information. The story was creepy, but so far only from the accused's words. Need evidence. Need to understand Helen's role. Need to find this Victor if he's still alive. In the car, she called the department. Alex, check Helen Peterson for me, director of the sewing factory Dawn in Birchville. Died 2 years ago. I need everything, biography, connections, property, close contacts. I'll do it, answered Alex, her assistant. Something serious, body under tree, lay for 16 years. Alex whistled. And also find me Nina Smith. Emily checked her notebook. The surname of Veronica's mother Max didn't name. Mother of the missing Veronica Davidson. If alive, I need the address. Got it. Emily hung up and started the car. Sleep today will be little. Nina Smith was alive, but barely. 81 years old, diabetes, sick heart, beginning dementia. She lived in a tiny apartment on the first floor of an old 5-story building, door upholstered in leatherette, windows overlooking a noisy road. Emily came to her the next day, having warned in advance through a social worker. The old woman met her warily, but when Emily introduced herself and said she came about her daughter, Nina's face changed. You found my Veronica? The old woman's eyes suddenly became clear. Young, found. Emily sank onto the sagging sofa. Yes, Nina, we found your daughter. The old woman seemed to shrink, hunched over, aged 10 years in a second. I knew, she whispered. I always knew my girl would never leave me. Never, she cried quietly, silently. Tears flowed down her wrinkled cheeks, and she didn't wipe them. Emily waited, took a pack of paper napkins from her bag, put it on the table next to the old woman. Finally, Nina calmed down a bit, wiped her eyes, blew her nose. How did she die? She asked hoarsely. She was killed, strangled. In September 2008. Who? Emily paused, her husband Max Davidson. Nina closed her eyes, her lips moved, either praying or cursing. She returned the paper to Emily. Where did you find her? Under a tree. On the plot where the Davidsons used to live, under a tree. Nina shook her head. 16 years she lay there and they walked over her. Drank tea in the garden, received guests and kept silent. Her face suddenly became hard. He confessed, right. Came himself after the body was found. He'll be imprisoned. There will be a trial. Article 105. Murder from 8 to 20 years. Nina nodded. And that snake Helen, will she answer too? Emily sighed. Helen died 2 years ago, but we're investigating her role in concealing the crime. The old woman was silent for a long time, then said, so she didn't wait. Well, God is her judge, although what God, devils should fry her. The viper. After talking with Nina, Emily went to Birchville, to the house where the Davidsons once lived. Now a young family with 2 children lived there, bought 3 years ago from some realtor, knew nothing about the house's history. The hostess, a pretty woman about 30, turned pale when Emily explained why she came. Under our oak where the children's swings stood. Yes, the woman pressed her palm to her mouth. God, the children played there every day, every day. Her husband, a strong young guy, frowned. And what do we do now? Sell? Who will buy this with such a history? That's your decision, said Emily. Legally, the house is clean, you're bona fide buyers. She inspected the plot, took photos. The pit where the body was found was already cordoned off with yellow tape. The criminologists finished work, but traces of excavation remained, piles of earth, cut roots. Emily stood at the edge of the pit and thought, 16 years. A young woman lay here 16 years, and above her the oak grew, sending roots through her bones. Seasons changed each other. People married and divorced, were born and died. She remained here in the cold earth, forgotten by all except her mother who never gave up. What did you feel that night, Veronica, thought Emily, when the husband you loved squeezed his hands on your throat, when you realized you were dying and the child inside you was dying too? There was no answer. Only the wind rustled in the branches of neighboring trees, and somewhere far away a dog barked. Returning to the department, Emily found a folder with materials on Helen Peterson on her desk. Alex had done well. Biography, photos, list of property, contacts. Helen was born in 1951 in the family of a mid-level party worker. Graduated from Textile Technical School, then Correspondence Institute. Came to the factory in 75, by 91 became director. Husband Robert Davidson died in 93, heart attack. Only son Max. In the folder were photos. Helen in her youth, strict but attractive woman with a hard gaze. Helen in maturity, busty, imperious in an expensive suit with a deputy badge on her chest. She was elected to the district assembly 3 terms in a row. And also in the folder was a name. Victor Crome, Helen's personal driver from 1993 to 2015. Now a pensioner, lives in a neighboring village. Emily picked up the phone. Alex, I need Victor Crome's address. Urgently. Victor Crome lived in the village of Oakwood, 20 kilometers from Birchville, a solid brick house behind a high fence, well-kept garden, an old but clean sedan in the yard. For a former driver, very good. Emily arrived without warning early in the morning. Crome opened himself, tall, wiry guy about 60 with military bearing and a keen gaze. Seeing the ID, he wasn't surprised, as if waiting. "Come in," he said calmly. "Wife, put on the kettle." The house was clean and simple, no luxury, but everything solid quality. On the wall photos, Crome in military uniform, Crome with wife and children, Crome next to a black sedan and a representative woman in a business suit. "This is Helen?" asked Emily, pointing to the shot. "She kingdom of heaven to her." Crome crossed himself, but somehow mechanically, without feeling. They sat at the table in the kitchen. Crome's wife, a plump, silent woman, put cups of tea and a plate of cookies in front of them, then left, closing the door tightly. "You know why I'm here?" said Emily. Crome nodded. "Found the girl under the oak." "How do you know?" "The village is small, news spreads fast." He sipped tea, was silent, then spoke in an even, colorless voice of a man who had long prepared for this conversation. "I knew that sooner or later this would happen. 16 years I waited, thought maybe it would pass. Helen died, Max drank himself, everyone forgot. But it turned out like this. Lightning in the tree and everything out." Emily turned on the recorder. "Tell me." Victor Crome's story began in 1993 when he returned from the army, served in a conflict zone, returned with concussion and shrapnel in his leg. No work, no money. Helen took him as a driver on recommendation from someone in the military office. "He valued people who know how to keep silent and do as told," said Crome. "I was just like that. After the war I didn't care. Told to drive, drove. Told to wait, waited. Told to forget, forgot." Gradually his duties expanded. He became not just a driver but a trusted person, solved issues that couldn't be solved officially, delivered envelopes to needed people, met guests from the region, sometimes intimidated those who interfered with Helen's business. She paid well. Crome shrugged. "Very well, this house built on her money, and my silence paid too. Why was because she died, and I owe nothing to the dead." He fell silent, collecting his thoughts, then continued. "That morning in September 2008 she called early, about 6 a.m. said come urgently. I came and there's such a thing. Her daughter-in-law lying on the floor dead. Max sitting in the corner like stunned. Helen walking around the room thinking. She was calm like a snake. In 15 years I never saw her panic. Iron woman. She told me, Victor, need to hide the body so that never found." I asked where. She pointed to the oak in the yard. Crome rubbed his face with his palms. "Digging was hard, roots everywhere, hard as stone, but I managed. By evening everything was ready. Did Max help? No, he sat in the room all day. Helen sent him somewhere so not underfoot. She organized everything herself, wrap the body, pack things, invent the legend." "What legend?" Crome smirked crookedly. "That the daughter-in-law ran away with a lover. Helen prepared everything in advance. Some photos, correspondences, showed Max so he believed his wife was cheating." Emily leaned forward. "In advance? What do you mean in advance?" "That's what it means. She had been hatching this plan for a long time, not murder. No, she didn't want her son to become a killer. She wanted the daughter-in-law to leave herself, go away, disappear. Helen thought to drive her out of the family with scandals, humiliations, but the girl was stubborn and then got pregnant too. And then Helen decided to act differently. Then she decided that if she couldn't drive out, need to make the son drive out himself or worse. She didn't know he would kill her, but she did everything for it to happen." Emily drove the car back to the city and thought about what she heard. The story was becoming more and more creepy. Helen not only helped hide the murder, she provoked it, systematically, methodically brought the situation to the boiling point. But Crome told something else important. The photos that Helen showed her son, evidence of Veronica's infidelity, were fake, made by an acquaintance photographer who worked in the local newspaper. Digital montage, primitive by today's standards, but in 2008 convincing enough for a husband mad with jealousy. "Is the photographer still alive?" asked Emily then. "Was alive a year ago. Arthur Sizer lives in the city. Helen paid him well both for the work and for silence." Emily found Arthur Sizer that same evening. He worked in an advertising agency. A shabby guy under 50 with a nervous tic and trembling hands. When Emily showed her ID, he turned pale. "I knew you'd come," he said, "sooner or later." The story repeated. 16 years people lived with this secret, and each waited for the truth to come out. Sizer told how Helen approached him in the summer of 2008, asked to make several photos, montaged the face of a young woman on shots with some man. Now Sophia was 40, a lean woman with a tired face and early gray in her dark hair. She worked at school as a primary teacher, lived alone, never married. I couldn't, she explained when Emily asked. After Veronica, I couldn't trust anyone. Thought, what if he turns out to be a monster under the mask of a normal person? They sat in the schoolyard on a bench under an old linden. The children had gone home, it was quiet. Tell me about your sister, asked Emily. Sophia smiled for the first time in the whole conversation. Veronica was bright, you know how it is. There are people who bring joy. She entered the room and it became warmer. Mom said she had a strong guardian angel, only it didn't protect her. How did she meet Max? At dances. In the local club disco every Saturday. Max saw her and fell in love. He was handsome then, tall, broad-shouldered, with a car. All girls eyed him. And he chose Veronica. She loved him very much. I remember how she told, eyes shining, said soft, he's so kind, so tender. She believed in him, you understand, completely believed. Sophia fell silent, looking into the distance. And then the mother-in-law appeared. Helen, Veronica told. From the first meeting looked at her like a wolf. Asked, who are your parents, what do they do, where do you live? Like filling out a form. And when she learned father is a worker, mother a saleswoman, immediately sentenced, unequal. But the wedding happened anyway. Max insisted. Then he could still stand up to his mother a bit, in small things. She didn't come to the wedding, imagine, said she was sick. And the next day met the young at the threshold as if nothing, showing who is the boss in the house. Sophia took out a worn photo from her purse. Two girls, one in a wedding dress, the second in a blue bridesmaid dress. Both laughing, both happy, this from her wedding, the last photo where we are together. Emily looked at the shot. Veronica was beautiful, not model glossy beauty, but alive, real, wide smile, dimples on cheeks, radiant eyes. She was found in her wedding dress, said Emily quietly. Sophia shuddered. What? She was buried in her wedding dress and the wedding ring on her finger. Sophia clamped her mouth with her hand, eyes filled with tears. God, what? She put on the dress that evening. I don't know, perhaps she was packing to leave and the dress was on top. Or Sophia didn't finish, but Emily understood. Or Veronica put it on specially as a symbol of what she believed in, as a reminder to her husband. We are married, we are family, you promised to love me forever. And he killed her right in that dress. In the evening, Emily sat in her office and laid out the case materials on the table, photos, protocols, interrogations, expert conclusions. The case was essentially solved. The killer confessed, accomplices gave testimony, motive and circumstances established. Can transfer to court, but something didn't give Emily peace. Some detail she missed, some question she didn't ask. She reread Max's testimony, then Chrome's, then Sizer's, and then understood. The photos. Sizer made fake shots of Veronica with some man. But where did Helen get the man for the montage? If it was just a random person from the internet, one thing. But if it was someone specific? Emily called Sizer. Arthur, one more question. The man in those photos, where from? Helen gave the shot, said this person. Use him. Who was he? Don't know. Young guy, 25 to 30, dark-haired, nothing more. You have the originals? Pause. Maybe in old archives. I stored everything on discs then. Find. This is important. 2 days later, Sizer sent the files. Emily opened them on the computer. Source photos for montage. Veronica, several shots from her social network account still existing in 2008. And the man, young, dark-haired with an unpleasant smirk. Emily peered at the face. Something familiar. Somewhere she saw him. She opened the folder with materials on the Davidson family. Photos of Helen, her husband who died in '93. And Emily froze. In one of the shots, Helen with two young men. Caption on the back, Max and Dennis, 2005. Dennis. Max had a brother, Dennis Davidson, Helen's younger son, 3 years younger than Max. In 2008, he was 24, and there was not a word about him in the case materials. Emily raised the archives. Dennis, born in 1984, graduated school in Birchville, then construction technical school in the regional center. Worked as a foreman on constructions, then went into private business. In 2009, a year after Veronica's disappearance, left the region, first to Denver, then to Austin. Now lived in Seattle, owned a small construction firm. Emily studied his photos in social networks. Dennis was similar to his brother, same facial features, same broad shoulders, but the gaze different. In Max's old shots, soft, open, in Dennis's, wary, prickly. She compared Dennis's photo with the image of the man Sizer used for montage. No doubts, same person. Helen used her own younger son's photo to convince the elder of his wife's infidelity. Emily called Seattle. Dennis picked up after the third ring. Davidson listening. Dennis, this is Investigator Carter from the Investigative Committee. I need to talk to you. Long pause. On what issue? On the case of your former sister-in-law, Veronica Davidson. Another pause, heavy, oppressive. Found her, said Dennis. Not asked, stated. Yes, where? Under the oak on your mother's old plot. Dennis was silent so long that Emily thought the connection broke, but then heard his voice, hoarse, broken. I'll fly tomorrow. I'll be there. Dennis flew by the evening flight. Emily met him at the airport. Tall man in an expensive coat with a small travel bag. Face haggard, dark circles under eyes. We'll talk in the car, said Emily, or in the department if you want officially. In the car. They sat in her service car. Emily didn't start the engine, just sat, waited. Dennis looked out the window at the airport lights. I've been waiting for this call 16 years, he said finally. Every time the phone rang from an unknown number, thought, here found, now everything will end. Tell me what you know. Dennis turned to her. Eyes inflamed, read, I know that my mother is a monster and that my brother is a killer. Is that enough? Dennis's story was the story of the younger son in a family where all attention went to the elder. Max the firstborn, hope and support. Dennis' spare variant. In case something happens to the first. Mother didn't love me, he said, looking into the darkness outside the window. Not hated, just didn't notice. I was like furniture, needed for the completeness of the picture. Family, 2 sons, all as it should be, but she put her soul only into Max. Dennis grew in his brother's shadow. Studied worse because no one checked his lessons. Didn't do sports because sections cost money, and money went to tutors for Max. Made friends himself without mother's help, and those friends were not from the best families. At 18 I left for technical school and breathed freely. Came home only for holidays, and even then reluctantly. Mother pretended to be glad, but I saw she didn't care. She was interested in one thing, when Max marries and gives her grandchildren. And then Veronica appeared. Dennis smirked bitterly. Yes, Veronica. He first saw her at his brother's wedding, stood in the corner, drank vodka, watched the dancing, and suddenly saw her laughing, whirling in a white dress, happy. I fell in love, said Dennis simply. At first sight, like an idiot from a novel. She was my brother's wife, and I couldn't stop thinking about her. Did she know? No, I never said anything, didn't show. Just looked, came to visit more often than before. Looked for reasons to stay longer. Mother noticed, of course. She noticed everything. Emily began to understand, and Mother used it. Dennis nodded. Once she said to me as if casually that Veronica is not indifferent to me, that she caught her glances, that Veronica asked about me. I believed, started fantasizing. Maybe she feels too, maybe we with her. He cut himself off. Nonsense. Complete nonsense. She loved Max, only him, but you didn't know that then, didn't know. Mother slipped me hope and I grabbed it. Further, the story became even more disgusting. Helen asked Dennis to take a photo. For family, I didn't have time to explain. When I understood what happened, when I put 2 and 2 together, Max already looked at me as an enemy, as the person who stole his wife. I tried to say it's a lie, the photos are fake, but he didn't listen. Hit me, broke my nose, shouted to get out and never appear. And Mother. Mother stood and looked with such satisfaction on her face. She achieved what she wanted. Veronica disappeared. Sons quarreled, Max now completely in her power. Broken, guilty, dependent, and I exiled, won't get underfoot anymore. Dennis left that same day, first to the regional center, then further and further to the other end of the country. I suspected, he said. No, I knew that Veronica didn't run away. She wasn't like that. She loved Max madly. She would never leave herself. Why didn't you go to the police? Dennis looked at her with a tormented gaze. With what? With suspicions. Mother, respected person, factory director, deputy. I nobody, younger son, everyone forgot. Who would believe me? Besides, he stuttered. Besides, I didn't want to know the truth. If Veronica is dead means my brother killed her. My brother a killer, my mother an accomplice. How to live with that? He turned away to the window. I chose not to know, left, built a new life, started a family. Wife, 2 children. Daughter 12, son 8. They don't know about Uncle Max, don't know about Grandma Helen. For them, Dad's family is a distant past that doesn't concern him. And now the past returned. Emily took Dennis to the department. He gave official testimony about the photos, about Mother's manipulations, about his suspicions. Investigator Alex recorded, Emily listened. When the formalities were done, Dennis asked, "Can I see my brother?" Emily shook her head. "He's in custody. Visit only with permission. Then at least pass him something." "What?" Dennis paused. "That I don't blame him, that Mother broke us both, and that I'm sorry, very sorry." The next day, Emily went to the detention center where Max was held. He had changed in these days, lost weight, haggard, black shadows under eyes, but the gaze became different, clearer, sober, as if arrest brought him some strange relief. "Your brother flew in," said Emily. Dennis, he gave testimony. Max flinched. Dennis. He's here, flew yesterday from Seattle, flies back today. Max hunched over, clutched his head in his hands. 16 years, he muttered. 16 years I hated him, thought he stole my wife. He's guilty of everything. And now I know mother is guilty. Max raised his head. His eyes glistened with tears. Investigator, she used his photos, so I believed, so I thought my own brother betrayed me. What a monster she is. Emily put the folder with materials on the table. Here are Dennis's testimony. Want to read? Max read for a long time, slowly, as if each word caused physical pain. When finished, put the sheets aside and closed his eyes. He's not guilty, he knew nothing, and I beat him, drove him out of the house. All these years considered an enemy. He asked to pass that he doesn't blame you. Max was silent. Tears flowed down his cheeks. She destroyed everything, he said finally, everything that was. My family, my child, my brother. For what? For me to stay with her, to be under her control? Probably yes. And she achieved it. 20 years I was next to her. Obeyed, submitted, did as told. She died happily in her house, surrounded by honor. And Veronica, his voice broke. Veronica rotted in the ground under the tree like a dog. Max hit the table with his fist. I hate her. Here, hate. I'm glad she died, glad. He shouted, cried, banged his head on the table. The guard ran in, calmed him, took him to the cell. Emily remained sitting alone, collected the papers, put them in the folder. Her soul was heavy and disgusting. In the evening she came home. Empty apartment, silent cat, cold dinner from the fridge. Husband left 5 years ago, no children. Work took all time, all life. Emily poured herself wine, rare for her. She almost didn't drink. Sat by the window, looked at the city lights. 16 years ago, a young woman was killed by her own husband. Her body buried under a tree, her memory smeared with dirt. The mother who looked for her died without waiting for the truth. The sister lost faith in people. The killer's brother lived with this knowledge, afraid to voice it aloud. And all this because of one woman, Helen Peterson, who wanted to control her son, wanted him to belong only to her. Emily thought about her motives, her calculation, her monstrous cold-bloodedness. What kind of person is capable of such? Set up the daughter-in-law, break both sons' live years with this secret and not flinch once. She remembered Chrome's words, iron woman, in 15 years never saw her panic. Iron, yes, but iron rusts. Iron can be broken. Helen died 2 years ago, but her crime came out, justice even if late. Emily finished the wine and went to sleep. Tomorrow court, need to be ready. The trial began at the end of October, when Birchville was already covered by the first frosts. District Court, shabby Soviet building, narrow corridors, creaky floors. The courtroom was overcrowded. Journalists came, onlookers, neighbors. The story of the body under the oak flew around the whole region. Max was brought into the hall in handcuffs. He walked with his head down, not looking around. In these weeks in detention, he haggard even more, cheeks fallen, eyes dimmed. But something new appeared in him, some gloomy determination. In the front rows sat the relatives of the deceased. Nina in a wheelchair, a social worker brought her. Sophia straight, tense, with a stone face. Next to them, several distant relatives of the Smiths whom Emily didn't know. On the defendant's side, it was empty. Dennis flew to Seattle and didn't return. Sent written testimony but refused to attend. Max had no other relatives left. Judge Irene Miller, a strict woman of pre-retirement age, opened the session. Hearing the criminal case on the accusation of Max Davidson in committing a crime under Part 1 of Article 105 of the Criminal Code, murder. The first days of the process went to formalities. Announcement of the accusation, study of case materials, interrogation of experts. The forensic medic confirmed the cause of death, asphyxia due to strangulation by hands. Criminologists presented the results of the burial site study. Investigator Carter outlined the chronology of the investigation. Then interrogations of witnesses began. First called Victor Crome. He gave testimony calmly, businesslike, as if reporting on done work. Told how Helen called him that morning, how he came and saw the body, how he dug the pit under the oak. Did you realize you were committing a crime? Asked the prosecutor. A young woman with a keen gaze. Realized. Why didn't you refuse, didn't report to the police? Crome shrugged. Helen paid me for many years, paid well. I got used to doing as told. So you helped conceal the murder for money? Can say that, whispers in the hall. The judge knocked the gavel. Silence in the hall. Max's lawyer, an elderly tired man appointed by the state, asked a few clarifying questions. Crome answered monosyllabically. Next was Arthur Sizer. He was nervous, stuttered, sweated. Told about the fake photos, how Helen ordered the montage, how he did the work without asking why. Did you understand that these photos could be used for deception? Asked the prosecutor. guessed but didn't think that. Sizer hesitated, didn't think it would turn out like this. Turn out like this is the murder of a young woman? Sizer hunched his shoulders. Yes. The culmination of the process was the interrogation of Max himself. He spoke for a long time, almost 3 hours, told about Mother, about Veronica, about that night. His voice broke, became monotonous. Several times he cried. Judge announced a break. Tell about the evening of September 23, 2008, asked the prosecutor. Max closed his eyes. Mother called me for a talk, said she must tell something important about Veronica. What exactly? That she's cheating on me with Dennis, with my brother, whispers in the hall again. Sophia in the front row clenched her fists. You believed? Mother showed photos. Veronica and Dennis hugging, kissing. Max swallowed convulsively. I believed. Mother never lied to me. I trusted her. What happened next? I came home. Veronica was packing things. I asked where. She said, looking for an apartment. Then I showed her the photos, asked, what is this? How did she react? Said it's fake, that Mother is deceiving me. Started screaming, crying. I don't remember. Exactly. Remember she screamed that I'm crazy, that Mother is setting me against her. Remember I grabbed her by the shoulders, shook. She broke free, scratched my face. And then he swallowed. Then my hands were on her throat. I squeezed. She wheezed, looked at me with such eyes, didn't understand what was happening. Didn't believe I could. How long did it last? Don't know, a minute, maybe two. When I let go, she wasn't breathing anymore. Dead silence in the hall. What did you do next? Sat next to her. Until morning, couldn't move, couldn't think. Then Mother came, Helen, yes, saw everything and said, I'll fix it. The interrogation continued. Max told how Mother organized the concealment of the body, how she invented the legend about the escape, how he played the role of the deceived husband, how he lived with this secret 16 years. Why didn't you confess earlier? Asked the lawyer. 16 years is a long time. Max shook his head. First fear, then habit. Mother said, forget, live on. I tried, married a second time, worked, made plans, but couldn't forget. Every night I saw her face, her eyes, how she looked at me when I squeezed. He cut himself off. I drank a lot. Wife left, couldn't stand it. Business fell apart. By 40 I was left alone in an empty apartment with a bottle of vodka and memories. And your mother lived as before. Factory, deputyship, respect. She visited me sometimes, brought food, gave money, looked with pity. Pull yourself together, said, you're a Davidson, you shouldn't sink like this. Max smirked crookedly. She didn't understand or pretended that she broke me. She made me a killer and then watched me fall apart, and not once in 16 years said, sorry, I'm guilty. For her I was a tool that fulfilled its function and broke. Did you blame her then? No, I blamed Veronica, blamed Dennis, myself, everyone except Mother, because I believed her. Until the end, believed she wanted good for me. And now, Max was silent for a long time. Now I know the truth. The photos were fake. Veronica never cheated on me. She loved me truly to the end, and I killed her because of a lie, because of Mother's lie. He turned to the hall, to the front row where Nina and Sophia sat. I know my words change nothing. No, you hate me, and rightly so, but I want you to know she didn't betray. Veronica was pure. She wanted only one thing, for us to be together, far from my mother. If I had listened to her then, his voice broke. If I had listened, she would be alive. And our child, and everything would be different. After the break, the court moved to the parties' arguments. The prosecutor demanded the maximum term, 15 years imprisonment, pointed to the severity of the crime, the victim's pregnancy, the years-long concealment. The defendant not only committed murder, she said. He lied for 16 years. Lied to the police, lied to the victim's relatives, lied to society. He allowed Veronica Davidson's honor to be trampled. They called her a cheater, a traitor, a loose woman, and he was silent. Silent, knowing she was innocent, that she lies in the ground under the tree he looked at every day. The lawyer built the defense on Helen's manipulations. My client became a victim of monstrous deception. His own mother, the person he trusted boundlessly, systematically led him to the crime. Fake photos, false accusation, emotional pressure. Max Davidson acted in a state of affect caused by sudden news of alleged wife's infidelity. He didn't plan the murder, didn't prepare it. It was a tragedy of a man deceived by the closest people. The judge listened, made notes. The court retires for sentencing. The verdict was announced 3 days later. The hall was overcrowded again. Max stood in the cage, pale, motionless, as if already not alive. Judge Miller read monotonically in legal language. The court established that Max Davidson, on September 23, 2008, committed the murder of his wife Veronica Davidson by strangulation with hands during a quarrel on the grounds of jealousy. She listed the evidence, witnesses' testimony, experts' conclusions, then moved to conclusions. Court takes into account the defendant's admission of guilt, his active repentance, as well as the circumstances under which the crime was committed, namely misleading the defendant regarding the marital fidelity of the victim by providing him with knowingly false photo materials. Emily listened holding her breath. At the same time, the court cannot but take into account the severity of the committed crime, the fact of the victim's pregnancy, as well as the long-term concealment of the traces of the crime. The judge raised her eyes from the papers. The court sentences Max Davidson to 11 years imprisonment with serving the sentence in a strict regime correctional colony. Max didn't change his face, nodded as if agreeing with something obvious. In the front row, Sophia squeezed her mother's hand. Nina cried quietly, silently. After the verdict announcement, Emily went out into the corridor, leaned against the wall, closed her eyes. Investigator Carter. She opened her eyes. Sophia stood in front of her, same straight, tense, but something in her face changed. Softened. Yes, I wanted to say thank you for everything you did. Emily shook her head. I just did my job. No, Sophia came closer. You didn't just look for the killer, you looked for the truth. The whole truth about the mother, about the photos, about the brother. You returned Veronica her honor. Sophia's voice trembled. 16 years people said she was a slut, that she left her husband for a lover. Mom was dying with this, with the thought that everyone considers her daughter a traitor. And now everyone knows the truth. Veronica was innocent. She loved her husband, wanted a family, wanted a child, and was killed for it. Sophia took out that same photo from her bag, 2 sisters at the wedding. I want you to take this as a memory. I can't. Take please, so you remember her as she was. Not a victim, not a body under the oak, a person. Emily took the photo, looked at the smiling Veronica, happy, alive. I'll remember, she said quietly. The cemetery on the outskirts of Birchville was quiet and well kept. Old lindens cast long shadows on the gravestones. Somewhere in the branches birds sang. Spring this year came early. Snow melted back in March, and now young grass sprouted everywhere. Sophia walked along the central alley, carrying a bouquet of white roses. She knew the way by heart. In 3 years she had trodden a path to this place. Veronica's grave was in the new part of the cemetery, under a young birch. Simple granite monument, oval photo under glass, that same from the wedding, only cropped so only Veronica visible. Smiling, happy, forever young. Veronica Davidson, 1984-2008. Beloved daughter and sister, rest in peace. Next to it another grave, smaller, Nina Smith. She died 6 months after the trial. Heart couldn't stand, but died peacefully, doctors said. As if let go of something that held her in this world. Sophia laid the roses between the 2 graves so both mom and sister got them. Stood silently, looking at the photos. Hello, she said quietly. I came again. She came every Sunday, told about her life, about work, about students. Sometimes cried, sometimes laughed, remembering something from childhood. These talks with the dead became for her something like therapy, a way not to go crazy from grief and loneliness. I have news. Sophia sat on the bench next to the grave. Remember Andrew, the physics teacher from the neighboring school? We started dating, 3 months already. He's good, Veronica, kind, patient, knows about everything about you, about the trial. Didn't get scared, she paused. I was afraid for a long time. You know, after everything that happened, couldn't trust anyone. Thought all men are like that, all capable. She didn't finish. But Andrew is different. He lost his wife 5 years ago. Cancer. Also knows what grief is. We understand each other. The wind stirred the birch branches and several young leaves fell on the grave. Mom would approve. Sophia smiled through tears. She always wanted me to arrange my life, not to be alone. She sat a little more, then stood up, brushed off her coat. I'll come next week, tell how things are. Leaving, she turned and looked at her sister's photo. I miss you, Veronica. Every day. Investigator Emily Carter received a promotion a year after the process. Now she was Lieutenant Colonel of Justice, headed the Department for Investigation of Especially Grave Crimes. The Davidson case became one of the most resonant in her career. Newspapers wrote about it, TV plots were shot, but for Emily, this case meant more than a line in her service record. And how many more such stories, thought Emily. How many people lie in nameless grave under trees, in forests, at the bottom of lakes. How many families never learn what happened to their loved ones. She couldn't save everyone, but could do her job honestly, stubbornly, to the end, dig until she digs to the truth. Like then with Veronica. Max Davidson served his sentence in a strict regime colony near a major city. 11 years is a considerable term, but with good behavior he could get out in 7 to 8. However, Max didn't think about early release, didn't make plans for the future. He existed day by day, week by week in the gray monotony of prison life. Worked in the carpentry shop, made stools, shelves, simple furniture. Hans remembered the craft. In youth he helped father at the cottage, planed, sawed, hammered nails. Now this skill came in handy. Once a month a letter came to him, without return address, without signature, only a few lines printed on a printer. News about Dennis's family. Daughter went to 6th grade. Son took 2nd place in swimming competitions. Wife opened her own bakery. Max knew the letters were from his brother. Dennis couldn't come for a visit. Too painful. Too difficult, but he didn't forget, didn't cross Max out of his life completely. This was more than Max deserved. He understood that. At night he dreamed of Veronica, not dead, alive, smiling like in that wedding photo. She said nothing, just looked at him, and in her eyes there was no hatred, no reproach, only sadness, endless quiet sadness. Max woke up with a face wet from tears and lay until rise, looking at the cell's ceiling. He knew he would never forgive himself, that this guilt is his cross he will carry to the end of life, and that this is right. Some sins cannot be atoned, can only live with them. Dennis Davidson never returned to his native places. Seattle became his home, a distant foreign city on the other end of the country where no one knew his past. The construction firm grew, business went well. Dennis worked a lot, returned home late, tired but satisfied. Wife Mary didn't complain. She understood that work for her husband is not only earnings, but a way to escape thoughts. Children grew, Kate the elder already fully interested in boys and fashion. Ian the younger raved about soccer and computer games. Ordinary children, ordinary family. That's what Dennis dreamed of all his life. He never told them about Uncle Max, about Grandma Helen whom they never saw, about that story which destroyed his first life and forced to start everything from scratch. Maybe someday when the children grow up, when ready to understand, or maybe never. Dennis hadn't decided yet. The only thing he did, once a month sent a letter to the colony, without signature, without extra words, just let know that he remembers, that he didn't cross his brother out completely. It was difficult to love a person who for so long considered you a traitor, who believed a lie instead of the truth. But Dennis remembered something else. How Max taught him to ride a bike, how he protected from bullies in the yard, how he shared candies from the holiday set. Mother broke them both, destroyed the family, destroyed trust. But she was dead and they alive. And maybe someday in many years they can meet again, talk, forgive each other. Dennis hoped for that. The house in Birchville where the Davidsons once lived was sold with a big discount. New owners, a young couple with a child, knew its history, but decided not to back down. Did renovation, rebuilt the yard. In the place where the oak stood, now a children's playground, swings, sandbox, small slide. Neighbors at first glanced sideways, whispered behind backs, but gradually got used. Life continued, new events displaced old stories. The body under the oak became a local legend, a scary tale to frighten naughty children. Only old-timers still remembered Veronica, remembered her laugh, her smile, her white wedding dress. Remembered how then they said, ran away, betrayed, left. Now they knew the truth, and this truth was scarier than any gossip. Victor Crome received 4 years probation for aiding in concealing the crime. Statute of limitations on some articles expired. Witness testimony mitigated the sentence. He continued to live in his house in Oakwood, tinkered in the garden, fixed the old sedan. Wife died a year after the trial, quietly in her sleep. Crome remained alone. Children long scattered, grandchildren came rarely. He whiled away days in solitude. Sometimes it seemed to him that his whole life was a mistake, that he sold his soul for money and comfort, and now pays with emptiness. Arthur Sizer received 2 years probation for making false evidence. After the trial, he was fired from the advertising agency. No one wanted to work with a person involved in murder. He got by with odd jobs, drank, sank. 3 years later, found dead in his own apartment. Heart failure aggravated by alcohol. Spring was gaining strength. In Birchville, apple trees bloomed. The air smelled of freshness and hope. On the children's playground where the century-old oak once stood, children played, laughed, shouted, swung on swings. They didn't know that under this ground 16 years lay a young woman, didn't know about betrayal, about lies, about mother's cruelty. For them it was just a place for games. Bright, fun, safe, and maybe that's right. Veronica would want children's laughter to sound here. She dreamed of family, of children, of happiness, dreamed of the future that was taken from her. Now other children played where her body rested. Other mothers swung them on swings. Other families lived in the house that should have been her home. Life continued. Unfair, cruel, beautiful life. Sophia left the cemetery and stopped at the gates. Andrew waited for her by the car, tall, a bit awkward, with kind eyes behind glasses. Everything okay? He asked. Yes, Sophia smiled. Now yes. She took his arm and they went to the car. Ahead was a whole day, lunch in a new cafe on the embankment, then a walk in the park, then maybe a movie. Ordinary things, simple joys. Sophia turned to the cemetery. Somewhere there behind the old lindens lay her mother and sister. They were dead and she alive, and she had to live. For both of them. Let's go, she said. The car started and rolled along the spring road, leaving behind the quiet cemetery, old grave and ghosts of the past. Ahead was the future.